Welcome back, y'all. Kicking it with Kunkel, 13-year big leaguer. Geoff Blum in the building, one of the voices of the Astros. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here. Pretty snazzy digs.
We're a big deal.
This is outstanding.
You've made it now.
Yeah, I feel like I have because I've seen the show and I've seen some of the excerpts, and I'm like, it's just a matter of time. And I'm glad to finally be around you and meet you because I've seen you around the ballpark plenty.
I appreciate that. Well, you're always in the area where I can't go. It's like you're you're next to the cage hanging on, and we have to be like 10 feet away from you guys or security takes us out.
I know. Yeah, I abuse the privilege that I get. We didn't have it when I first started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were pretty adamant about keeping us away from the cage. So that kind of broke my heart a little bit, being an ex-ball player. Yeah. And so as soon as they opened everything up, I ran to the cage and just be around the guys is where all the action's at. Yeah.
So you got the taste of being the enemy in the media.
Oh, man.
How bad we are.
Yeah. Well, I remember being the player and being around the media, and now I'm on the other side. So, yeah, I have a whole new respect and appreciation for the media side of things.
It's fascinating to me to talk to old ball players of any sport, how the media relationship was like in your era versus how it is today.
Man.
How would you describe the changes?
There were certain people you knew not to be around because I didn't play in the era of this thing recording anything you say instantly.
Lucky.
The voice recorder just being on and resting somewhere. And I've learned what a hot mic is, obviously, over the years. But there was never that issue. It was always a tape recorder. So if somebody was in the Clubhouse and they had a tape recorder and they were in the vicinity, you just kind of locked up. You really learned really quick to keep your mouth shut. But it was a really good relationship. I vividly remember being here in Houston with Jim DeShays, and when the media had left the Clubhouse, Jim DeShays being an ex-ball player, he came in and we just sit down and talk about the games and talk about maybe a scouting report or something he's heard. And we would just kind of go through some of the stuff like that. But it was a really good relationship. And I think that relationship allowed me to sit where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Well, how do you now view it from your role now?
I am hyper respectful of the player. And I know that times are a little bit different. The sensitivity is a little bit higher. I've got to be much more careful about what I say about players than what was said about me.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with us being tougher than players now. I just think it was the circumstance. I understood that people were going to be hypercritical of us, and we just, you just respected it, and you talked to them the next day, and you said, hey, I didn't appreciate what you said, and you have the conversation. But now I understand that I've got to be a little more respectful, and to that point, I do not hang out in the clubhouse for that very reason, because that was the sanctuary. That was the place where players were players, and I loved being in that situation. My time's done, it's theirs, and I just kind of leave the clubhouse alone. But I'll hang out on the field with them.
It's funny you say that because, I'm a pretty outgoing, gregarious, loud dude. And when I'm in the locker room or clubhouse or wherever I am, I get real quiet because it's like that's their area. I don't need to go in there and be me. No one needs all of that. Who the hell is this clown coming into our area, kind of taking over? No one needs that.
Don't want to act too comfortable in there.
Yeah, be respectful, especially around the lockers themselves. And, it's an interesting place because to have that access, I think you need to respect it because it can be taken. It shouldn't be taken away, but people can ruin some certain opportunities.
Yes. Oh, and they do. Yeah, you know that as well as anybody. I mean, I appreciate you doing that, but you see it everywhere you go.
Yeah, and it's tough because you get closer to the guys because you're around them every day, and being kind of the personality I have, they have kind of the same. But at the same point, it's like there's a job to do. Mm-hmm. They have a job to do. We're not boys right now.
Yes.
And there's an age. What's even crazier is I was closer to Justin Verlander from an age standpoint and relatability from that standpoint than everybody. They're all kids now.
Oh man, yeah, they all could be my kids.
So you see some of the media people try to get close. You're like, bro, that dude's 25 years younger than you. What are you doing? It's just weird.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's not hard to relate, but at the same time, it is.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's just a different generation. Like I said, this whole cell phone, the access to information, TikToks, and everything that's going on social media wise. I mean, these guys are on the clock every time they show up because there's video cameras and there's microphones. But I try to relate. The only way I relate to some of these guys, and it's kind of funny, like Altuve, for instance, I'll go down and go, hey man, 4 hits yesterday. I'm like, way to go, Poppy. And I'll go what'd you see? How'd you approach? And he'd be like, he goes, how's your daughters?
Yeah,
because now you're dads and you're trying to exchange some information, and then we start talking about coffee, or we start talking. He loves art.
We'll talk to Caesar about coffee.
Yeah, big time. Salazar.
He's
There's some
obsessed.
certain guys that if they come out of the hotel at the same time, I'll just sit back and stalk them and see where they're going, and like I'll go into the coffee shop. But yeah, stuff like that.
It's a good team. It's a good clubhouse.
It's a great clubhouse. It's a clubhouse. The clubhouse is so good that I'm jealous of it. And I feel like there's a handful of clubhouses that I was in that were very good, but there was still a little bit of a hierarchy, veterans, rookies, guys in between, long-term contracts, 1-year contract guys. But this clubhouse, it's amazing to me to see them just embrace literally every personality, every level that they're at, no matter if you've got 10 years in or 1 year in, they all get treated the same. And I'm a little envious of that because that was not happening when I was playing.
So what do they lose in the clubhouse with no Breggy, no Kyle Tucker?
A lot. You lose a lot, but you also find out a lot too, I think. And it's an opportunity to kind of fill those voids. I think Jordan's kind of one of those softer spoken, amazingly enough, at his size and his stature and his ability. He's a little bit more of a soft-spoken leader, and I think he does that by getting big hits in situations where he's able to calm down, keep his heart rate low, and smash balls, 450 feet and leave no doubt in victory. So he kind of leads in that sense. But, I think you lose that vocal leadership. You lose a lot of intelligence between those two guys because even at the ability level that they played at, I think they really understood the game as well. And Bregman, that's where he kind of took off last year, was inside that clubhouse, providing so much knowledge to the young players, how to get through a 162-game season, how to make your stuff more effective. I think he had a huge impact on what Hunter Brown is doing. And
that two-seamer.
That two-seamer was ridiculous.
So filthy.
And I think that it's become such a good pitch for him. And with him pitching at that upper rail in the strike zone, I think he opened a lot of eyes around the league. I think there might be guys around the league emulating what Hunter Brown did last year. So I think that's kind of cool. But, when you lose something, there's always an opportunity to fill that void. And just some of the stuff that I've heard, Hunter Brown's become a little more vocal. So you kind of wait and see what happens, And I think when the season breaks, you'll start to see some of those personalities come out trying to fill that void.
So in losing Kyle Tucker, we got this new kid. I don't know if you've heard about him.
Yeah,
Cam Smith.
Yeah, rumor has it. Yeah,
is that right? Cam Smith. Am I saying this correctly?
Yeah,
traditional spelling. I got told the other day that there's a good chance he makes the opening day roster. I think this is really evolved throughout all of the spring training because he's only got like 20 at bats or something like that.
Yeah.
In Double-A at this point, and that's when he was with the Cubs. So everyone that's like, this is a bad idea, they're pushing him. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. We'll find out. Mm-hmm. But the only way to get at bats against big league pitching, is to do it in the bigs. You're not going to do it in Double-A or Triple-A anywhere.
Yeah, the big thing is how many at bats does he need to be seasoned? How many at bats does he need to qualify to compete at the big league level? And obviously, spring training is an excellent opportunity, especially these later days when you start to see more starters go deeper in games. He's going to get 2 or 3 at bats against a legitimate starter. Say it's Jacob deGrom in St. Lucie against the Mets, and really get to see some of the challenges and how he reacts to it. Not just the success, but how he reacts to some of the failure and how he adjusts, to seeing that pitching consistently. But I think it's a unique situation for Cam Brown. Beside the fact that he looks
Cam Smith,
sorry.
Who's Cam Brown? Old friend.
Yeah, old friend. Cam Smith. The thing about Cam Smith is if you drew up who was supposed to be a number 1 pick and who's going to be the key piece in a trade, Cam Smith is that guy. He looks like it, he plays like it, and now he's proving that he can go out there and compete. And you have the combination of a young Cam Smith and Dana Brown. Dana Brown, if you look at his track record, you go back to Atlanta, he promoted all of these young guys and said, we're going to give you big league contracts if you produce at this level. They did. They're a championship caliber team. And Dana Brown loves rushing these guys to the big leagues. And there might be an opening for him on this team if he swings the bat well enough. And I think it's a credit to the athleticism of a Cam Smith as well. He's a third baseman, but they feel that he could play right field possibly, and maybe that opens up the opportunity because that bat's going to find a spot.
Well, my thing is, if he's in the bigs, and I asked this question to the person I talked to, I said, if he's up there, he's got to get at bats. Like, you can't have him up there sitting down.
100%.
So if he's in the bigs and makes the opening day roster, he's your starting wherever guy.
Yeah,
right fielder, it sounds like.
Well, I would say it sounds like right field. With the Jake Myers, Chas McCormick situation, but there's also an opportunity. Maybe, there was rumors when Arenado was being talked about being traded, or the opportunity of Bregman coming back, that you can move Isak Paredes to second base. Mauricio Dubon can play all over the outfield. He's argued that he's a better center fielder than he is a second baseman, where he basically won the Gold Glove. So you're going to be very good defensively, no matter how you go out there. And with Altuve moving to left field, it creates all kinds of versatility and options for Joe Espada.
So what are your expectations for Cam? What's reasonable and what's fair?
Well, if you would have asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would have said, hey, if he just comes in, hits you 250, drops 15, 20 home runs, and just kind of moves into the bottom part of the lineup, I would be okay with that. The way he's gone now, when this guy is seasoned and comfortable at the big league level and figures it out and makes adjustments, is he a 30-100 guy? I feel like he has the potential, but I'm trying to temper that because I'm so excited about what he's bringing to the table. I want to see it. I want to see it.
So you think it's a legit promotion to the bigs versus because we all listen. The outfield is a question mark right now.
Yeah, no, Cam he's forcing the issue. I think it was a nice. It was a nice, I don't want to say security blanket, but it was a nice option to have in AAA. Say he goes to, Sugar Land and just lights it up. And you're going, boys, we got this guy in AAA. He's coming up. He's going to be ready. And then you give the Jake Myers, Mauricio Dubons, Chas McCormick's, you give them the month, 2 months. You give them, 100, 150 at-bats to try and figure it out. Because if Chas gets back to Chas, you're great. If Jake Myers goes out and hits 250 and hits you 15 and drives in 50, 60 runs and plays that elite defense that you need, then you're in great shape.
Yeah, you have the potential to have one great outfielder with Jake and Chas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like I don't have expectations for Jake to hit. Not that he can't, I just haven't seen it yet. So I say that because if Chas can do what Chas did a couple years ago, that changes this entire roster and the forecast of the season. Because if he can pop 20
100%.
to 25, like it's a different team. And now your
100%.
big question in the outfield is no longer a question. It could become a strength with Chas, Cam, and Jose. And you're like, holy crap, what happened?
Yeah, imagine that. You have an elite defense out there. And it's crazy to think that you could say moving Altuve to left field, Dubon, say it's just for the time being that these guys are playing well, putting up the numbers that you want, and you've got Dubon at second base, Isak Paredes at third base, and Chas and Jake out in the outfield. You've got an elite defense for this pitching staff that Joe Espada is going to throw out there. And then you get the hitting, because like you said, Chas at his peak is a 20 to 25 guy, but he was one bag away, I think, from stealing 20 bags. So he's a threat offensively, defensively, and on the base paths. But I think for Chas, it's just confidence. It's just believing in himself and getting back to who he is.
It's such a key point of something I talk about all the time on the show is the mental side of the game, especially in baseball. And Chas went through it last year. I felt for him. Like I truly did. I even said to him at one point, I was like, dude, you're one of the best hitters in the world. Like just like rest on that. Not that that helps or means anything.
No, you're right. But he's unique in the sense that his power is going to the opposite field. And I feel like he got away from the opposite field last year and got a little bit into the pull side, trying to elevate, and just got away from his strength because he's got ridiculous power going the other way, and that's when he's at his best.
What's that like for a big leaguer? Because you're for someone like me who obviously never made it. I see you or I see Chas, I'm like, damn, like so much talent. Like, how do you even question your ability? It doesn't even seem logical to someone like me. But when you're going through it in baseball, it's like, holy crap, can I ever get out of it? It's like quicksand.
Yeah. Oh, it is like quicksand, and everything's exaggerated, it's magnified. And again, I didn't have to play during a 24/7 news cycle where everybody was putting your stats on the internet, constantly going, why is this guy playing? Fans had voices, but they were just during the game. It was never off the field. So you're kind of going through that. But that's the one thing I think you're fighting as a professional athlete constantly, no matter what sport you're in, is that self-doubt. Because the second you say, do I belong here? That's when you start to falter. And that's when you kind of get away from who you are a little bit. But hopefully the adversity creates a new personality and more character in a guy like Chas and enables him to kind of produce. And maybe that was the hiccup last year. And then he kind of goes on and plays well. But when you're going through it, you feel like you're on an island. You feel like you're in the box. Every count is 0-2. Every pitch you see is the nastiest pitch you've ever seen in your life. And you feel like you're holding the barrel instead of the handle of the bat. I mean, everything is going wrong, but you've got to find something that you can repeat, something you can battle with, and through the grit, you've got to find the grace and give yourself a little bit of grace in that situation too, because understanding that I'm bad right now, but I'm not as bad as being shown, and you're always going to be your worst critic. I found that out on the field. I find that out in the booth too.
You know, it's funny. I saw something today on Instagram where you get all your life lessons these days. It's like your worry right now feels this big. In 10 years, it's going to feel this big. So with that being said, when you're in the bigs, you played 13 years. Surely you had a cold stretch.
Oh man, several.
Do you remember one that was just like, I may not, I don't, maybe I'm, and how do you get through it? What did you do?
That you're going to start getting a little bit deeper into some of the psyche and some of the issues that I had as a player, and I'm not afraid to talk about them because I do believe that there is, the mental health of an athlete is a lot to be spoken to and hasn't been spoken to. I think even with Kevin Love and some of the stuff that he's done, at the major league level, it still needs to be talked about more, I believe, just so that we can understand how to move through it. Because, when I was playing, it was, put your nose in the dirt, let's go, you fight your way through it, as opposed to being like, there might be something really going on that I need to work through. And in 2004, I got traded in the winter of 2003, I get traded to the Tampa Bay Rays from Houston, where I was super comfortable, had two of my best years in the big leagues. I was on a winning team, and I get traded to this, I don't want to say dumpster fire, but it was a rough stretch in Tampa before they got good. And I moved into a situation with a manager that I learned to hate in Lou Piniella. I hate to say that, but I did not like him at all. And if you look at my numbers that year, I hit 215 with like 8 home runs, 30 RBIs, didn't play all that much. And I got to the point where I was like, I can't get out of this. And I literally called up a friend. I said, hey, I need a mental coach. I need somebody to get me through this. And it was literally, coaching on how to train my brain to believe that I can compete. And basically you start from this idea of how I want to finish the season, and gradually started working my way back to what do I want to do by the end of July? What do I want to do by the end of June? And then it was like, what do I want to do this month? And then eventually it got down to where I was at the point where I would stand at third base and I'm like, they would throw a pitch. Okay, next pitch. And I eventually got to the point where I was just like, next pitch. And I was going pitch by pitch, just trying to get through the season. And eventually I got comfortable enough to say, okay, next series. But I learned a lot in that season and took it on the chin.
So how did that help you grow as a player?
I think the fact that I was scrambling for a job the next season, after I thanked the Tampa Bay Rays for releasing me, which basically you got fired, and I was like, thank you. But it was scrambling for a job the next season, but it was a lot of learning of what not to do. And being able to develop confidence in that offseason. I think it's also being in a situation where you move into a clubhouse where every time I dug into the box, I didn't feel like I was the only one digging in. I signed with the Padres in 2005. I got to be home. Obviously, that was a great year. But you talked about being able to kind of see through the chaos, and 2005 gave me an opportunity to see through the chaos. And I got on a team that was super supportive. We were a great team, good personnel in the clubhouse, and I had an opportunity to play on great teams. I had great support. And I think that's what I learned most, is that the support is paramount, even in this game where you're an individual when you're standing in the box.
It's so hard to get to the bigs. It's harder to stay there, as everyone said. Did you ever get to enjoy your time as a big league ball player?
That's a really good question, because now that I sit in the booth and watch the game, I love the game again. It was kind of funny. 2013-14 was my first couple of years of broadcasting. I was terrible. Luckily, the Astros were terrible at the same time, so it was not many people were watching, and I got to be able to cut my teeth a little bit working through some of those ball clubs. But there was a point, maybe about halfway through 2014, another 100-loss season. But at the same time, I started to kind of find my voice, find my rhythm, find my cadence, and find my niche. And I got a text, I can't remember who it was, but it was an ex-teammate. They were watching the game, they're listening, and they're like, hey man, you're doing a great job. And they go, are you enjoying it? And I said, you know what? I actually am. And it might have been in the middle of like a 10-game trip where I was just spent, running out of ideas. The guys are playing terrible, but I was just trying to find ways to stay positive about it. And I texted him back and I go, I'm loving it. And I go, I actually love the game again. And so I started to fall back in love with the game again when I started to get in the booth and watch what these guys were doing. And I think that really kind of nurtured the ability to look back because, like you said, in the middle of it, I didn't really have an opportunity to say, I'm at my peak. I'm going to make a team every year. 13 years, 11 one-year contracts. So it was kind of, I was playing every year to get into the big leagues and to stay in the big leagues. So I didn't really have a chance, like you said, to enjoy it. I mean, there's moments in the season where you're swinging the bat well, your team's winning ball games, the fans love you, and you're like, okay, that was awesome, man. This is great. I remember a stretch in San Diego where I had 7 multi-hit games in a row. And we were winning. I'm like, it's never going to get better than this, boys. But it not until I've been able to look back, because watching what the Astros have done in this last decade, understanding how my career's worked, and now looking back at some of the situations, I haven't been able to appreciate until I've been able to look back. But in the moment, no.
That disconnect between the fan and the player when you're doing a one-year contract over and over and over again is so big because they don't see what that's like. They don't know what that's like. I mean, even if at your own job, wherever it is that you're doing, if you're on a one-year, like if I'm on a one-year deal here every year, and it's like, I mean, you're turning everything into sawdust because you're squeezing it and you're gripping it. You feel like you're never doing enough and you don't know what's next.
So true. Yeah.
And that gap between them and the fans is like the fan doesn't give a damn.
No.
Like, well, you're still getting $8 million, so like, what the hell's the damn problem here, Geoff?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the paychecks are still rolling in.
Yeah.
But that's another thing. At the end of October, that's that last check. Yeah. And as soon as that last check hits the bank account, and you get through month of November, and you don't have a contract, and you're like. And I mean, I've got 4 daughters. I'm going, okay, we got to find a way to get through that.
It's like turbulence on a plane. Like it gets bumpy and you don't know when it's going to end. So if you panic, it's because you just don't know when it's going to end. Not because of what's happening in the moment necessarily. You just don't know how long it's going to go.
Yep.
And people are looking at you and you're like, I don't know. Like, I don't know, honey. My agent hasn't called me. Like, do you think you need to switch agents? I don't think so.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Fortunately, I had a very good agent who was very patient and very encouraging. But considering who he's worked with over the years, I bet you, the price per deal.
Who was your agent?
It was I was with Arn Tellin that turned into WMG. The Casey Wasserman group, Joel Wolf.
Some big names.
Yeah, Joel Wolf was my guy, and he inked the Giancarlo Stanton. He's got some Asian guys that he's given some good deals to, but I guarantee you, the grind that he had on my contracts trying to get me a job was way tougher than some of the other ones. Yeah, he's like, just give him a year, please. Yeah, guarantee it. Just guarantee 1 year. That's all we're asking. Yeah.
All right, back to the Astros.
The Astros are awesome.
Do you see Jose Altuve going 150 and left or 15 and left?
Man, I think okay. So I think if you're going to give him the opportunity. And these are conversations that are going on with Jose Altuve, Joe Espada, Omar Lopez, Dave Clark's in on these, and they're doing the same thing. They're grinding these things out, but I think they have a map. And if you look at left field, you're going to say Yordan Alvarez, maybe Mauricio Dubon days. So when you start to count backwards from 162, or you say 150 games, if you can give Altuve 12 days off, you're going to try and do that throughout the course of the season.
That means you have to tell him he's not playing 12 times.
That means you take his uniform out of his locker and say, chill out for the day. He loves playing. But I think if you have him inked in as your left fielder, you start to count backwards and you say 150 games. How many games is Yordan Alvarez going to play? 30, 40 games maybe out there. And then you get to about maybe 100 games in left field. So I'm kind of looking at that 100-game range for Altuve in left field. And that includes 81 home games, unless you try to put Yordan out there and protect him and his legs in left field at Daikin Park, because it's a little bit shorter. Obviously, it's maybe a little bit easier to play left field out there. And then I'm picking my spots. I'm saying whenever Hunter Brown and whenever Framber Valdez are on the mound, I'm going to have Altuve out there in left field, because those are 2 heavy ground ball guys Maybe we can relax a little bit and he won't get too many opportunities to get exposed. But I'm sitting at 100 games right now, minimum, if I'm going to have Jose Altuve out there in left field, because he's going to have his mandatory DH days, and you just hope those are on the same days that Yordan's out there playing left field. But I think if I was sitting in that manager's office, I've got him inked in for 100 games in left field.
Okay, I have another question, but for everyone watching the streaming on Fox Local right now, we're at the 26-minute mark, so this is going to live on Fox Local, the whole thing. We're going to keep talking here, and it's going to live on YouTube as well. So we're going to have to end this right now, but now go over to YouTube, go to Fox Local, and click on the full thing. Okay, so with that being said, Geoff, that makes me give me anxiety for Joe Espada. Like, this is going to be, not because the team's not good, but a very tough job for him to figure out where to play Mauricio, when to play him, when to play Jake, where to play him, when to play Chaz, when to play him, where to play Jose, when and how. Like, that's not easy.
No, it's not. But on the other hand, I think that the way the bullpen and the rotation are shaking out, at least he can take a deep breath on that, because last season, the rotation, the bullpen, I mean, he was scrambling just trying to find wins that he really got burned out trying to figure out the bullpen. I think it's going to be a little bit more fun to figure out where to place some of these guys, because then you start to bring in some of the analytics and some of the matchups, who matches up well against this starter, this guy, who's on my bench, that kind of thing. But I think for the time being, Mauricio Dubon better bring every single glove he's got, because it's such a luxury to have Mauricio Dubon.
Great guy.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal dude in the clubhouse to begin with, and then you have he puts together at bats. He doesn't strike out, so you can count on him in situations to put the ball in play, and then to be able to play Gold Glove caliber at 3, 4, 5 different spots. That's unique in itself, and he's great in that sense. So you can give the Isak Paredes, the Christian Walkers, some of these other guys days off. Even Chaz in right field. You could throw Mauricio Dubon. He's just looking for at-bats, and you can throw him out there. So he's a luxury. But then you have the Zach DeZenzos who are lighting it up with the Cam Smiths. I think if Cam Smith shows up, another luxury item, but again, that's taking a spot out of a lineup where you hope to have a Mauricio Dubon or some of these other guys mixing in. But it's going to be really interesting, because the hope is Altuve plays a good enough left field that you can just say, well, throw him out there, we'll be fine. But if things get a little hairy and he gets uncomfortable out there, that's when you're going to have to start to rethink the situation a little bit.
The biggest concern in left is obviously the arm. He doesn't have a very good arm. He just doesn't. I think he's protected at Daikin.
How dare you?
At Daikin.
Yep.
He's protected there because you don't send the runner from third with less than 2 outs. You have the wall there. It's on you. It's a short left field. So I think he's protected with that, because if you play aggressively, you charge the ball, get the ball in like Little League. Just throw it in, Johnny. Just get rid of the damn ball in. That's all he's got to do.
Yep.
Now on the road, that's why I think you said 81 games at home, okay, or whatever. 81 games at home, and then on the road, piecemeal it together maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I think be a little more selective on the road. If you just look in division, Seattle's got a huge ballpark. All throughout the outfield, and you're going to need some coverage. But if like I said, Fromber and Hunter are pitching, then maybe you can sneak him out there.
Good point.
If you Anaheim or LA, whatever the heck you want to call it out there, San Gabriel,
Los Angeles, California Angels.
That's a huge left field. So I think that might be a ballpark where you say maybe we don't throw him out there. We need a little more coverage, and Mauricio goes out there, and then maybe you bring him back to the infield for a game or two. So it is going to be interesting how you kind of put all that together, and I got completely lost in what we were talking about.
Well, just like his arm, and
you brought up a good point. The way you compensate for a bad arm is being aggressive to the baseball. He's quick, he's fast, he's got good hands. So if he's quicker to the baseball, the third base coach is obviously going to pick up on that, and scouting reports are going to come out. They're going to say, look, Altuve doesn't have the best arm. We can challenge it, but if he's quick to the baseball, the idea is to get the baseball before the runners at third base or before the runners at first base, so you can cut him down.
And you can do that in left field in Daikin.
Yes.
So, like, if you're running in on it, and you're coming up throwing, you're only like 15 feet from third base.
Yes.
Like you can make that throw at home.
And you can hit the cutoff man in the chest.
Exactly.
The other thing is hitting the cutoff man. Making sure you get it into the hands of Jeremy Pena as quickly as possible.
Exactly. And have him go out an extra 10 feet.
So it's funny you say that because when I got called up back in the 1900s, I played with a center fielder named Rondell White. Incredible athlete, mashed the baseball, all-star, everything about him. Had one of the worst arms I think anybody's ever seen in their life. And Felipe Alou pulled me in the office, but I was playing shortstop at the time. Felipe Alou pulls me in the office, and he's like, oh, when you play a shortstop, there's something you got to know. Rondell White arm is terrible. He starts going into this whole thing. He's just wearing poor Rondell out. And he said, if anything gets over his head, he goes, you have to go out there and basically take it out of his glove. So that was the idea. Myself and Jose Vidro on my left, anytime a ball was hit to the gap, we would run out there and literally I'd be 30 feet away from Rondell. But Rondell, to his credit, understood the situation. But I mean, he would basically just pick it up and immediately get rid of it and put it in our hands and let us chuck it in. So I think that'll be a similar, not to that extent, but it'll be a similar idea for Jeremy Pena.
If Rondell White, Johnny Damon, and Juan Pierre can play 15
center,
years in the bigs and center, Jose can do 81 and left at Daikin.
100%. No, that's an excellent example. All three of those guys are very good examples of that.
I love those dudes because I got better arm than them. That makes me feel like I got something to prove. I'm good enough. Is this a playoff team?
In the West, yes, I think they are. I think, I think they're going to break out to begin the season a little bit better than they did last year.
Oh, they can't break out worse.
Yeah, but that's most of the point right there is they can't be any worse than they were last year.
Sucked. That was tough.
But their rotation is solid. I think I'm curious about Wisniewski because, when we found out we traded for him, local kid gets to wear the Astros uniform. Obviously, he's excited. But I was like, is he going to be in the bullpen? Is he going to be a starter? And immediately, he's the fifth starter. So there's something there that I can't wait to see. Mm-hmm. And he rounds out a very good rotation where it's kind of interesting that Spencer Arrighetti is going to be your 4, Rennell is going to be your 3, and he's got a no-hitter under his belt. So the starting pitching is going to be good. Can Taylor Scott repeat what he did last season for the 3/4 of the season? The back end of your bullpen, I think Josh Hader's going to be better than last year, even though his peripherals, like his whip and his strikeouts per 9, everything was basically who he was. He just gave up too many home runs. I think the back end of your bullpen is going to be great. And I think that this is more of a cohesive unit. You're not relying on Bregman to break out early. You're not relying on Tucker to break out early. I think this team started to understand in the middle of last season, chasing all those wins with Kyle Tucker on the injured list, that these guys can play a little bit. And if they play as a ball club, they're going to be all right. You just need to have the Chas McCormicks and some of those guys at the bottom of the lineup show up every once in a while. They don't have to show up all the time, but if they show up every once in a while, I think they're going to be in good shape. And Seattle's got great pitching, but I didn't see their offense get better. I think they're going to be similar to what they were last year. Anaheim, man, I don't know what they're doing. Rangers
wasting Mike Trout's career and
completely.
Pissing every baseball fan off.
They are. We
don't get to see him in the playoffs once.
And you're not cheering for that guy, but we got to see Shohei last year do his thing. But Mike Trout's never had the opportunity. It is a crying shame that he hasn't this deep into his contract, because who knows how many games he's got left playing every day in Anaheim. A's are going to shock you. I think they're a fun team to watch just because they're young and they're kind of, there's a little bit of anger to them.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, we'll see how long it lasts in Sacramento
Baseball's
too.
a tough one to play emotionally.
It's tough to play emotionally.
Exactly.
It's tough to play in 115 degrees every day too. So I think that'll have some wear and tear on them. The only question mark I have is are the Rangers the 2023 team or are they the 2024 team?
That's going to be very interesting.
Because DeGrom coming back, how long can he stay healthy? They're interesting and they're a good ball club, but I still think that the Astros are the cream of the crop in the West, and they're only going to get better pitching wise.
Real quick on the slow start last year, it was like the buttons for Joe were miswired. Like the winning button was here, but it was miswired to the losing button. Stay healthy button was miswired to the injured button.
Yeah.
Like he would hit the right button every time. Though the win button, Hader comes in. Like there's no one else to call in the ninth, and then Hader gives up a dong and you lose.
I know.
You start Bregman every day. You hit that button, and he's horrible to start.
Amazingly, yeah.
There was nothing that Joe could do right. He just hit the right button, and then eventually they looked underneath and they're like, oh, it's all miswired. Our bad. Sorry about that.
I forgot we put the it's like the truck went sideways during the middle of the game. You're like, oh, we just forgot to plug it in. But isn't it a credit to Joe Espada and his patience? I thought he handled that amazing last year, not freaking out, not panicking, just kind of sat there stoically. There were moments that we had shots in the dugout, and I know you saw it too, where you just kind of sit there in an awkward position going, is it ever going to turn around?
But not only that, but like, what do I do?
Yeah, like
there's nothing from. I'm putting in. We had the best back end of the bullpen, right, going in the year last year, and it was one of the worst for the first month.
Yes.
Like, what do you want me to do? There's no. Those are the guys.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be good. They're the ones failing.
Turn around, look at the GM suite, and be like, Dana, these are. I'm putting
Josh
the guys
Hader,
in.
really? Like, obviously that guy's the answer, but that's what baseball is. It's a 162 game season. But I said to him when I had him on the show, I said, I've never felt like a marathon of a season, which baseball is, was such a sprint. It was such. It was every day. It felt like it was a must-win game every single day for 162 games. And he said that's what it was. And then we got to the playoffs and we are gassed. He said we were so tired, we were so burnt out from getting back to where we needed to be.
Yeah, and then they end up playing a team that was just hungry as hell. It was just
That
like
kid
excited.
Scooball. Oh, is he dirty?
Yeah, he's pretty filthy. And AJ had those guys motivated, but
great manager,
when you're grinding
obviously.
for wins in the middle of the season.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's real tough.
All right, real quickly here as we kind of wrap this thing up, where's this team going to make its hay? Like, what are they going to rely on for 162?
Pitching and defense. I think my whole thing, my plan for a team to go out there and play well, and you saw it a lot in over the last 8 years with this team in the playoffs. I think it's great pitching, great defense, timely hitting. You're going to have Jordan hit you 40. You're going to have Altuve hitting 300. You're going to, sorry to get sidetracked, but one thing that's kind of turning me on is Jeremy Pena. He's hitting bombs. Yeah, that's a guy who kind of took a little bit of a step back last year.
Yes.
Lost a little bit of the power stroke, was hitting line drives and started to strike
his swing so much.
Yeah, but he was so concerned about not striking out that I think he was worried about contact. When you go out there chasing contact, you're not going to hit for power. This spring, he looks great. So if you can get him back to that 2025 guy also, I think you're in great shape. But I think that this lineup is sturdy enough to withstand 162 games if they get back to being patient at the plate. Because one of the successful things that this organization's done over the years is just wear down and grind out at bats and just 60, 70 pitches through 4 innings, through 5 innings for some of these starters, and you start to push some of these starters out and bring in bullpens, and then they've got nothing left for the series. And I think if they get back to those grinding at bats where they get deep in counts, get those timely hits, but I think it's going to be pitching and defense. It's going to win ball games for these guys.
This is going to be a different team than years past.
Yeah.
Like the lineup is not nearly as long. It doesn't match the way that Astro fans are used to, so it's going to be different. I personally am so excited to watch Spencer Arrighetti pitch. I love the way he pitches. I love his attitude towards pitching and the mental side of it.
How much has he grown up?
So I said to him,
isn't it crazy?
I said to him in the clubhouse in spring training, it's like, bro, I think you said 3 words last year, and it was because we had to ask you what it was like to be in the bigs, and you're like, I like it.
Yeah.
Now you won't shut up, and it's awesome because I love to
He's
get in his
saying all
head.
the right things,
yes,
too.
and he loves pitching. He loves the mental side of it and inventing stuff and figuring it out, which I think is just so awesome.
Yeah, he's always had that analytical mind, and I think that's probably what's interesting. He's kind of that modern day pitcher, where he kind of grew up on saying key phrases like shape, profile, and this pitch. Coming out of the bullpen, I felt like this pitch had great shape. You can get away with that in the minor leagues because the consistency of talent is different at the big league level. You can have the best shape in the world, but that best shape may be right into a swing path of a guy at the big leagues, and that guy's not going to foul it off. He's going to barrel it up, and he's going to launch it. So even though you feel great about that shape, that may be pitching to that guy's strength. And I think what happened to Arrighetti is he started to marry the analytics and his stuff to scouting reports.
His stuff is so nasty. His arm is so live.
I feel like he didn't realize how lively his stuff could play at the big leagues because he was so worried about shapes and release points and that kind of stuff. But the extension he gets and the spin he gets on that fastball plays so well at the top part of the zone that I said a couple times last year, if he just lands a curveball in the first inning in the zone somewhere, he's gonna be successful that day because it splits the zone from the top and bottom. And he can move his fastball wherever he wants, but the second you throw that breaking ball in, I go, oh man, I don't have to just protect the top. All of a sudden, if he starts one up there and it's spinning, I've got to get down here and protect the bottom part of the zone, and it keeps that hitter off balance. And then you add the cutters, the occasional, he's probably got a changeup mixed in there that he's got really good, or a little bit bigger sweeper. He's got great stuff, but hearing him say that he's putting the analytics side with the scouting report side, I mean, that's a maturation that's going to work really well for him.
The one thing I'm concerned about with him is his emotions. I just want him to keep his emotions.
He's excitable.
Exactly, like just boring on the mound, because when you get excited on the mound, you don't know where it's going.
Well, did you notice a lot of fans watched, a lot of the fans like me were a fan of that game he pitched in Philadelphia. And in talking to him, I had a couple of caravan and events that we did this off season, and talking through that game, it was kind of fun to hear him say, when I blew away Kyle Schwarber, he goes, I started to feel it. He's like, you could see him starting to ramp up, and he's like, and then I got Trey Turner on this pitch, and you could see him start to amp up. He goes, but I knew I had to face him 2-3 more times, and I think that's what you're talking about. If he's able to go, I've got it, but I got to bring it back down and pitch here, because if I get here, I'm going to be exhausted.
You don't win until you're out of the game. You still got to do do that again, and that's when you get hammered. Is the third time around. That's when those dudes make their money, is on their third at bat in the game.
100%.
Finally, what worries you about this team?
It's always
don't say injuries. Don't say injuries.
I was going to say, I was going to say how healthy they can be if I can just
Not
rephrase, be
related.
diplomatic. Yeah. Because that's always the thing. I mean, you ask anybody who's played the game or coached the game or been around the game, reported on it, what's the one thing? It's always going to be that first thing is, getting through 162 games with everybody being as good as they can be on a daily basis. I think it's, can Cam Smith compete at this level if he does make the team? If he doesn't, can he come in and make an impact on an already good team, which I think could be fascinating as well. Chaz, I need Chaz to bounce back selfishly because I like the guy and I want him to be around. He's entertaining. He's got one of the better home run calls for me. When he goes deep, I'd like to have the meatloaf ready to go for him. But I think I think what's interesting, and I can't wait to see, is oddly enough, and it was crazy when we made the trade to get Isak Paredes. You're like, okay, now what do we do at first base? You pick up, I think Christian Walker is a sneaky good pickup, one of the more underrated guys. I know
if he stays healthy.
Yeah, I know he's agree. A little bit older.
Yeah.
But your corner infield production is better on this team than it was last year.
Oh, yeah.
No offense to John Singleton, Caratini, and some of these other guys.
It was addressed for a reason.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're actually better. I want to see if those corners are better. I think that's going to have a huge impact. But I'm having a blast watching Isak Paredes, and I hope he has an impact on this lineup just in the fact that he takes so many pitches. I mean, that's a guy that could really set the tone for grinding it out. But I want to see this offense. I want to see who's the guy in this offense because, like you said, Bregman and Tucker are gone. Altuve and Jordan are obviously guys. Who else is going to be that guy?
Biggest question, of course, is outfield production. That's the biggest question right now. All right, most important question. What the hell is Psycho Bunny?
Oh,
everyone's wondering at this point.
Oh, I was just say, well, that's a good thing because they were gracious enough to hook me up with some of the.
Hey, how about the rest of us, Psycho?
It's funny enough. It was a company that was started maybe about 15, 20 years ago, and like their whole thing was just this logo, just the bunny ears and crossbones. So it kind of caught everybody's eye. It was a European brand that came over to the States. They sold out, but the company that bought them is now based in Montreal. So we got a connection.
How about that?
Montreal Expos. And it was kind of funny because the ownership group is in Montreal, and I have a friend who's working the West Coast region for them and brought my name up at the board meeting, and they're like, oh, Blum, I used to play for the Expos. Oh, we love this guy. And they're like, so they just fired a bunch of gear at me, and I'm more than happy to rep them. Instead I went from gloves, batting gloves, and shoe deals to proudly repping
quarter
Psycho
zips
Bunny.
with the Mannings.
Yeah.
Well, now that he's been on Kickin' With Kunkel, Psycho Bunny.
Yeah, there we go. We could shift gears.
The only thing that's right is you shift me some of that stuff, and I'll certainly wear it.
There you go.
Geoff, you're the best, dude. Next time I'll get you on. I want to talk about some of your days in Montreal.
Those days are old, man. Nobody wants to hear that old stuff.
I do.
Yeah.
Did you play with Senior, Vlad?
Oh, yeah. No, Vlad.
What a freak.
I came up with him.
Were you there when he hit one off the ground, the ball that bounced and he hit it?
Yeah, I don't think I was on that team. I think he did that with the Angels, if I remember correctly.
Damn.
But just a quick story. I came up through the minor leagues. Double A, he was we're like, why is this guy here? he didn't play AAA. He went straight from AA to the big leagues. But we eventually get to the big leagues. Pete McCannon, who was our third base coach at the time, is coaching third base. I'm sitting on the bench watching, and he takes a down and in slider from like, I don't know, probably like Randy Johnson or somebody crazy, and hits a tank the other way in Montreal, the Big O, which is just a graveyard. And me, Mike Mordecai, Ryan McGuire, and somebody else, all the 4 bench guys, we're just sitting there, we're going, dear God, did you just see that? Pete McCannon at the end of the inning comes in and goes, you, and you will never be as good as that guy. And I mean, he just took off like a rocket
No wonder
ship.
you had mental issues when you play.
I was like,
coaches
dude,
like that.
But I'm like, and we were all just kind of like, you're right, this guy's unbelievable. But I was broadcasting when they inducted him into the Angels Ring of Fame or whatever it was at the stadium. So I got to go. I got to go back there, slapped him on the ass, and was like, buddy. And he just turns around, he's like, oh, So it was like, yeah, we hung out quite a bit. He's awesome.
Man, that's the one guy I think of when I think of the Expos, and then you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Senior,
yeah,
and then
distant second.
And then a little bit of Randy Johnson and Pedro.
Yeah. No, there was some Will Cordero, some of these guys, Larry Walker.
The studs that were on the Expos teams were elite.
Yeah. Who knew? I get drafted in '94 and I show up to spring training. Who knew I was going to be in awe of the Expos? Like, there were guys walking around. I was like, oh man, those guys are
studs.
Good. Yeah.
Like some Hall of Fame guys.
Yes.
For an organization that's no longer around, kind of crazy.
It is crazy.
All right, that's it. That's Kickin' With Kunkel. Like, click, subscribe, do whatever it is that you got to do to please the algorithm. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.